हेलो।
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मुश्ताक सर, मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है?
जी वालेकुम अजीम भाई, आ रही है आवाज़ आपकी?
क्या लिंक ठीक है बेटा? ये लिंक है जी।
ठीक है, थैंक यू, बस कंफर्म करना था।
जी जी।
Hi, lecturer.
Thanks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Today we will be having an extension lecture, and the topic is, are we prepared to die? On the face of it, it looks to be something quite daunting, and one might feel some goosebumps while even listening to this title. Well, yes, the purpose is that death perhaps is the greatest of all realities of life. And as I said, the purpose is that we should keep on reminding ourselves that this event can happen anytime, anywhere, to any person. It's not just the old people who die, it's not just the sick who die, it's not just people who are in war zones who die or who are struck with a famine who die. People die natural deaths, and very young children die, boys and girls die. We have accidents, we have pandemics, we have all sorts of causes of death. In fact, death is something which has not been denied and cannot be denied by anyone. People have denied God, people have denied the hereafter, but there is no single person on earth who has denied or can deny death, because it's something that is observed by our eyes. Everyone witnesses it, everyone observes it. And as far as death is concerned, this is something that all of us clearly acknowledge. On the other hand, the will to live, the desire to live, also is found in human beings to the ultimate extent. No one wants to die. Everyone wants to live a healthy, long life. And the fact that death is something that might bring an end to one's life here is something that most people would be very, I mean, they would face it very, in a very conservative way. They would find it hard to acknowledge. In fact, I would like to bring this to your notice as well that since 2008, there has been this Project Longevity that has been launched by Google and some other very high tech companies. And the purpose of this project is to treat death as a disease. So it's called Project Longevity, which means that people would like to live as much as they can, and in fact, they want to extend their lifespan to such an extent that all things that cause death, like disease and war and other ailments, they are slowly they are overcome. So this Project Longevity, which was launched around 2008, and it's now like almost 20 years or 2 decades, we don't know much progress about it, but such is the desire of a person to live forever that this is how it manifests itself, that people would like to have this death treated not as an incident, not as an event, but as a disease. We also have people who preserve themselves at cryogenic temperatures. They preserve their bodies in search of the fact that they are suffering from a certain fatal disease, and there might be a chance that in the next 5, 10, 11 months, there would be a breakthrough, and the disease that they are suffering, it might be something that could be actually, I mean, they could have a cure for that. So what they do is that they preserve their bodies, or they opt to preserve their bodies at cryogenic temperatures in a certain liquid in which the heart is, I mean, is functional, but the remaining body functions, they are just put to sleep, and a person can survive in this state for some months. So again, this shows how the desire to live and outlive others is there in every human being. And in fact, if I may say this, that such is this desire to live an eternal life, that the Almighty has said to us that yes, though this is something that might be a dream for in this world, but certainly in the hereafter, you will have eternal life. So the point that is being made here is that such is the love of life, that whether you have eternal life in this world or in the next world, it is something that becomes a very, very coveted and a very prized and a cherished goal which a human being would always have. So, although this is something that is beyond the scope of our discussion today, but the important thing that I would like you to really gauge here is that as adults, as people, and as individuals who have this everyday experience of looking at people and seeing people die, at times people stare death in their eyes and they miraculously escape. So, a couple of things are in order through which we can remind ourselves and keep on reminding ourselves that this is an incident, this is an event that is bound to happen, and we must never forget it. The first thing that I'd like to say in this regard is that the reminder that we can always sound to us, to ourselves, is that we must write a will. Every person who has some possessions, who has some belongings, he or she, even if these are some clothes that you have, it might not be a very huge amount of currency. Anything that you possess, obviously, that's going to go to some person after we die. So we have this leverage. We have been actually urged by the Quran that we should write a will regarding our belongings, regarding our assets, and this will can be made in favor of heirs also in certain very exceptional circumstances. Like, for example, if someone has done some extraordinary service or is in some extraordinary need. So in that case, a will can even be made in favor of the heirs. But other than that, of course, will can be made in favor of charity organizations, in favor of some poor people or any cause. And that is a right that has been given to us, although there is this misconception that we cannot write more than 1/3 of our wealth for will, which is, of course, something that has arisen because of a particular instance in which the Prophet advised a companion to do so. But this is not a general ruling. A will can be made to any extent. Obviously, the law of the land, of course, at times has to be always looked into. In fact, must be looked into because it would prevail. But I would just like to clarify that as far as the Sharia is concerned, there is no limit to the making of a will. The amount that you have in mind can be used to make a will. Obviously, this should not be to an extent that you deprive the rightful heirs of what they need. So yes, keeping in view the norms of justice, any amount of money or wealth or belongings or assets or property that we have uh, can be given to people by writing a will in favor of them. So the first thing would be to always write a will. And remember, this will is something that can be always updated. It's not something static. You can have it in a file, you can have it in a soft copy, and you can have someone, you can make someone privy to the fact that you have written a will and it's lying at such and such a place. And so this is one thing that you can keep on updating the will. And so that's something that will also keep us reminding of the fact that death can come anytime. The second thing that is very powerful with regard to a reminder of the hereafter is to often visit graveyards. In fact, the Prophet, when he had initially stopped women from going to graveyards because they would raise a lot of hue and cry, they would create a scene. So initially, they were stopped from going to the graveyards, but later on, when they got, educated and instructed and groomed, so they were allowed to go to graveyards. And the reason which the Prophet cited to them that they should visit graveyards was that it is a reminder for our own death. It reminds us that this is our final resting place. In fact, the prayer that he taught us, the supplication that he taught us when we pass by graveyards is something which which reflects this whole concept. So it says, "Assalamu alaikum ya ahlul kubur, inna insha'Allahu bikum lahikun." So, peace be to you, O dwellers of the graveyard, and soon we will be joining you. So, this is the prayer that we utter, that soon we'll be joining you, and peace be to you. So, visiting graveyards, of course, this is something that we get a chance as well because we have our own relatives buried in graveyards. So, it is like it gives us an opportunity to visit graveyards. But nonetheless, if even if that is not the case in some instances, visiting a graveyard just for the sake of reminding ourselves is something that can always be very helpful in reminding ourselves of our own end. The third thing that can be used as a reminder for our own death is the instance of some death that we attend to. For example, the death of a near one, the death of a dear departed. So we go to funerals, we go to people or places or instances there are in which our own close ones they die, or could be friends, or could be acquaintances, could be neighbors. So to use an opportunity, and this is something very special because you see, you are seeing someone lying in front of you who's about to be buried. So this is something which can really have a very strong impact. So we can use this opportunity to keep on reminding us of the fact that yes, death is something that is going to come to anyone, and the Quran, of course, has cited this in a very beautiful sentence. It says, "Kullu nafsin za'ikatul maut," that every single soul must taste the flavor of death. Everyone born has to go away. The fourth thing that can be used as a reminder for death is something that we have just witnessed in a couple of days earlier, is the huge gathering of Hajj. If you look at the gathering of Hajj and the way we wear ihram and the whole ground on the field of Arafat, especially, in which people just gather there and in their groups, they are wearing those those white unstitched two cloths that they wear, which is called ihram. Men wear ihram, and women, of course, they wear their own clothes. So the gathering itself gives us the feeling as if we are going to one day gather before God. So we are gathering here to offer this ritual today in huge numbers, wearing something which is very, very close in resemblance to a shroud. And that is something that is also, it continues to remind us of the fact that yes, death is something which is inevitable. Another thing that keeps us fresh with reminders of our death is that we look at the afterlife because we know that our own systems, they are not as perfect, or and sometimes they are absolutely imperfect as regards accountability. So there are so many instances in which there's no justice served. In fact, at best, what we can obtain in this world is possible justice. We never can obtain perfect justice. People, they suffer in this world, and they are not even compensated. On the other hand, we find people who make hay, and they are criminals and wrongdoers, and they enjoy the comforts and luxuries of life. So it is this phenomenon that also can remind us of our death and the system of accountability that's going to be enforced in the hereafter, because we know that if these people who are criminals and wrongdoers and who have oppressed people, who have committed horrible crimes against humanity, God is not going to let them go scot-free. If not in this world, then He's certainly going to catch them in a very painful way in the hereafter. So this is again a reminder that if people are prospering and at the same time they are committing horrific crimes, then we should know that this is again something that's going to happen to them. The sixth thing that I'd like to remind you regarding the our own death is, if we keep on reading the Quran and of course scriptures in general, the Quran leaves no stone unturned. There's hardly a page that you turn that you would not find the mention or the reminder in some form or the other that people were held accountable in this world. There were nations of God who were destroyed because of their disobedience, and that accountability is going to, take place for us as well. It keeps on reminding of the fact that we are going to face accountability, and death is something that has to come to us. In fact, this is something that can distinguish a person who is religious and a person who is not religious. So a religious person is one who believes in afterlife, who believes in life after death. And the Quran, if we keep on reading the Quran, we will be attached and we would adhere to this concept in a very strong way. The seventh thing that can remind us of death and prepare us for death is that we should also try to prepare, in fact, if possible, have it at hand, keep it near us, our shroud. So the shroud in which we will be ultimately buried, let us not leave it for our heirs and other people who we leave behind to buy that shroud later on. There are people that you might be knowing. I know people who have bought their shrouds. In fact, they use their ihram at times to do the work of a shroud. So let's buy our own shrouds in our own life, and so keeping an eye on our shrouds, or every now and then checking on the shroud, is again something that will remind us that we are here for a temporary stay. And then, of course, another thing that can remind us of our death is that we should always think that since life is temporary, since life is going to end one day, let us make this decision that we will donate our organs to people who might need them. So, for example, our eyes, our skin, stem cells, our kidney, liver, there are certain organs that can be donated as soon as we pass away. And there are organizations all over the world, in almost every country, which will come and collect your organs at a very rapid rate. They'll just come to you and and do whatever they need to do in order to extract those organs in a very meticulous way. And then the body would be sealed up once again and stitched back. And so organ donation itself, and in fact making a will for donating an organ, our organs, is something that's going to remind us that this is something that's going to happen one day. Again, one more thing that can remind us is physical cleanliness. Remember, physical cleanliness has been directed. We are urged to maintain ourselves. We must clean that unwanted body hair wherever it is, and we know wherever that has been asked from us to just clean that part of our body. So, because of course, we would know that once we pass away, people will be giving us a bath. They will be cleaning us, and physical cleanliness is something that we should always remember, that we should not uh, we should not make our heirs or people who wash us feel embarrassed that, well, this person had not even kept his hair wherever it was unwanted, or just stripped away. So yes, that is something that is also, it reminds us of physical Cleanliness reminds us that one day we are going to go away, and that cleanliness, if we are clean bodily, then of course our own people who give us this bath or clean us, they'll be, I mean, they will not be in any sort of embarrassment. And the last thing, dear viewers, in this regard, that again is very, very important and something very, very impactful in reminding ourselves of our death is to write a memorandum. In that memorandum, of course, is something in which that we all know that we have things which only we are privy to. There could be files, passwords, documents, bank accounts, financial obligations, financial transactions. So all these things, I mean, they have to be jotted down somewhere in the form of a memorandum. And like that will that I spoke of earlier, that should also be, I mean, updated regularly, because our financial obligations, files, passwords, usernames, all these things, they keep getting changed. So we must maintain an up-to-date memorandum and consign it to someone whom we trust, so that once we pass away, our heirs, they are not in any sort of bother regarding our belongings, and they know about our financial obligations. They also know about the important things. There might be relics that we might have, even family relics, even things that people might not know. And in fact, let me just add one more thing before I uh, talk about another aspect of reminding ourselves about death. And that aspect is that, I mean, it's a very powerful exercise that we can do every day. And that is that before going to bed or before sleeping every night, we must imagine and we must try to imagine that this could be our last night on this planet Earth. We might never wake up. So before going to bed every day, let us also remind that the sleep that we are about to enter, it could be a last sleep. We could just die and go away. And the sun that we often see rising every day, the tomorrow that we often witness every day, it might never come for us once we sleep today. So we must think every time we go to bed at night that this could be our last night. So these are some of the reminders I wanted to share with you. And the purpose, of course, is not to in any way cause that disturbance that might unsettle ourselves. But still, the purpose is that to some extent, we must understand that death is an event that has to take place, and more often than not, we are not prepared, and it takes place in a certain way that it comes so suddenly that some of the things that we have to do before we die, we just I mean, they are left amiss. And again, as I said, that this is something that makes us also realize that this life is temporary. This life is a place in which we are like travelers. We are like I mean, wayfarers who pass through this area, and then we go on to our final destination. So, so this is as far as our reminders are concerned, and these reminders are going to serve us in preparing ourselves for that inevitable that can happen anytime, anywhere to any person. Now, in this second part of my talk, I'd like to just point to a few misconceptions that prevail regarding the concept of death and or post-death scenario, and some things that relate to death ceremonies that we often attend in themselves as well. So the first thing that we must know or we must contemplate is the grave punishment, or the fact that what is going to happen once we pass away. Is there going to be a grave torment? Shall everyone pass through that grave torment? So what is the exact situation as far as the Quran is concerned? Now, this is a area of our religion in which we must be very, very clear, because there are some very grave misconceptions regarding the grave torment. So, grave misconceptions regarding the grave punishment. So, the thing is that we must understand from the Quran that there are two categories of people living, or who have lived ever since Prophet Adam, and who will live until the day of judgment. So one category is of people who are normally the addressees of messengers of God and prophets of God, whose account is settled in this world. So God settles their account, their accountability is done in this world. And these are people who live in the times of God's messenger. So this is one example. And in the presence of God's messenger, the truth is communicated to people to such an extent that now if they deny, it would be only sheer stubbornness. So they are communicated the truth in this ultimate form in this world, and if they still deliberately deny it, then they are punished in this world. For such people, that punishment is going to continue in that period that we call the period of barzakh, in which people are just put to sleep in the land of barzakh, which is a place where the souls reside. Once a person dies, the soul is just taken away from that body and it is deposited in that place called barzakh, and it is put to sleep. So people whose account is settled in this world, so they in their sleep will be made to witness a certain amount of torment, and they'll be woken up as well, and they'll be asked certain questions, and they'll be shown their place of ultimate punishment, where they'll face that punishment. So they will be shown that place, and we see this in the example of the Pharaoh and his people. It's being cited in the Quran. So this is one category of people who will be tormented in the barzakh, which is, of course, is like a metaphor for the grave. So the grave, of course, is just a place where we have buried our mortal remains, the mortal remains of our dear departed. So, I mean, the actual punishment regarding such people is not going to take place in the grave, but in the land of barzakh. But because from the indications of the Quran, we do know that that land of barzakh is close to the grave of a person. So that is why we use the word grave punishment. Otherwise, for all intents and purposes, it is the punishment in barzakh. But as I said, that this is specially reserved for people whose account is settled in this world, and a very prominent example of such people are the addressees of a messenger of God. Now, there's another category of people which generally exists in the post-prophetic era, people like us who today live in the absence of God's messengers. So our account is settled or will be settled in the hereafter. So as you must have seen, that the Quran speaks of the fact that there'll be a scale, people's deeds, there will be weighed in that scale, and then, of course, the verdict will be pronounced. So remember, this is the second category of people, and this is the category of people like us who live in the post-prophetic era. And for us, that accountability is yet to take place. For people like us, we are just put to sleep. Our souls, of course, are put to sleep. And this sleep is something that is going to continue until the day of judgment, when we will wake up. As the Quran has said it on a number of occasions, we'll just exclaim that, well, I just slept. And we might have slept for thousands of years. So this is like deep sleep. When we sleep at night and get up in the morning, it might have been 8 hours. But when we get up in the morning, we just feel as if we have just slept. Such is the nature of that sleep. So in a similar way, the Quran says that when we wake up on the day of judgment, we'll acknowledge or exclaim that, well, I just slept, or I was just a couple of days in this world, and now I have arisen in this new world. So this is the second category of people. So in other words, we can know that people like us, whose account is to be settled in the next world, for them there is no such torment in barzakh, because they're just going to be put to sleep. Their account is going to be settled in the next world, and then they'll face the accountability. So for all intents and purposes, as a summary, you can see that people whose account is settled in this world, and they are mostly people who live in the lives of messengers of God, they are the ones who will be, of course, subjected to torment, and at the same time, they'll be rewarded as well. For the martyrs, for example, the Quran says, "Bal ahya'un inda rabbihim," that they are awake before the presence of God, or in the presence of God, and you don't know, and they're being provided with sustenance also, some spiritual sustenance. So those martyrs, whether they exist in the times of God's messengers or in these times, for them, God says that there is a certain amount of life in the land of barzakh or in the territory of barzakh. But for the rest, they're just put to sleep, and once they get up in the hereafter, then their account will be settled, and then, of course, they'll be either punished or they will be rewarded. The second important misconception that I'd like to address regarding death and death rituals, I would say, is the fact that we often gather after the death of a dear departed, and what we do is we read the Quran, and we think that the reward of whatever we read is going to be transferred to the dead person. Now, this is something which the Quran has not condoned. In fact, it says that the reward that a person is going to get, or the punishment, is something that is non-transferable, so to speak. It's non-transferable. So the Quran has said, "Laysa lil insani illa ma sa'a." A person will only get that reward for which he had striven in the previous world. So, for example, it's not someone else's deed that I can benefit from unless either I was the initiator of that deed in my own life or I was the source of that deed. So, for example, if I was someone who had started a hospital or maybe a school or any venture about which we can say that the initiation was done by the person who, of course, ultimately died, but he had started off that venture that continued to serve humankind. So, of course, that is the reward which a person will get. But any reward which is done by some other person for which the intention is not there by the deceased person is not in any way going to be transferred to the account of a deceased person. So, and this is something that we often do. We have these the third day kul, we have the 40-day chihlam. These are all, I would say, innovations that have arisen much later after the Prophet had passed away, in fact, hundreds of years after that. And we know that this is something that never ever happened. The Prophet lost his wives in his own lifetime. There were many martyrs who were killed in battles. There were many other people who lost their lives. And then the Sahaba, and then the successors, all of them, they passed through these ordeals. But we don't find any such gathering of transferring of reward to the deceased uh, taking place. So, as a principle, we must understand that as far as this is concerned, it is absolutely non-transferable. If you think that you would like to transfer, so to speak, a reward or maybe pray for your dear departed, then the best thing that can still reward a person who's passed away would be that you commemorate the life of that person in the sense that whatever good deed that person, maybe a father or a mother or an uncle, taught you, and every time you practice that good deed, your aunt or uncle or father or mother who taught you that good deed is going to be rewarded as well, because now the initiation was, of course, from that deceased person. So any good practice like honesty or speaking the truth or being just, if that was something that you learned from your parents, so every time you show that honesty or you speak the truth, which was taught to you by your parents, they'll get the reward as well because they initiated this in their own lifetime. But anything which they did not do, like for example, there are many people who would create a trust, or they would create a hospital, or they would just dedicate a room in a hospital to their parents, thinking that it might reward them well. This can only be a source of reward for them if they had something to do with it in their own lifetime. Otherwise, anything that a person does as a good deed is just going to be rewarding for that person who is alive, and it's not going to be in any way beneficial. The third and last thing that I'd like to address here regarding such instances is a post-death scenario regarding the iddat restrictions of women who become widows. Of course, they lose their husbands, and then in most cases they are confined to their homes for many months. Of course, in the case of a widow, it's 4 months and 10 days. So the ruling regarding such widows is that they must confine themselves, they must not wear colored clothes, they should just wear white clothes, must not go out, etc. Now, this is something that we can see has no basis in religion. It is more of a cultural thing. And as far as widows are concerned, they are allowed to go out. In fact, this is the time that they should go out, maybe for a walk, maybe to visit some friends, or maybe for any other reason, just to appease themselves of the loss that they have suffered. So the fact of confining them to home has no basis in religion at all. What they should not do, according to the Quran, is that unless the iddat passes, they should not marry someone, which of course no one would do. Normally, no one does that. However, in the Arabian scenario earlier on, 14 centuries ago, women, they would often marry again. So for them, it was said that please, in this period of iddat, do not marry and do not adorn yourself with colored clothes, because this could actually be a little bit of a nightmare for the in-laws with which she is living it, who are the mother and the father of the deceased husband. So it was for them that this was prescribed. And also one more thing that I'd like to point out here is that iddat basically is the time or the waiting period that is being prescribed in order to determine whether the woman is pregnant or not. So if a widow is not pregnant, and if a medical test can vouch for that, it can clarify that there is no such thing, then even the maintenance of iddat for 4 months and 10 days is also not needed. So this is something that was needed in those times to preserve the period of pregnancy. You know, if a woman was pregnant and her iddat was to extend until childbirth, and that is why this was said. So this is again something that we must try to revisit, because these cultural boundaries, they play havoc with our elderly women who lose their husbands. That is an ordeal in itself. But then we make life miserable for them by not letting them go out of their houses, not letting them attend functions, and not even letting them go for meeting some people or their own friends. That is, of course, has no basis in religion. So, viewers, this was something that I wanted to share with you as a small talk. That, of course, as far as religion is concerned, that is one thing that we have to understand. That death is something that stares us in the eye all the time. We might choose to close our eyes, but it's an event that can happen anyway, anytime, at any place, to any person, whether he's sick or not, and whether the person is elderly or is a young person. So we have to always be vigilant in this regard, and always think that the life to come is something that is the real life that we must strive for, and at the same time pray that we are able to meet our Lord, our God Almighty in the hereafter, and we feel at least a little bit proud that whatever we did sincerely, whatever we did in a way was not something in which we became adamant on our sins. We were not audacious in our sins. We always felt or took responsibility of any wrongdoings, and we always felt ashamed. And we thought that we must always turn to God whenever we stumble and whenever we fall down. So, with this, I come to an end to this talk, and now you can have questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have a few questions in the chat, and for future questions, please raise your hand, or you can continue to type them in the chat. Our first questioner asks, if a Muslim family is living in Europe or the United States and has not purchased a grave, whether that's due to financial constraint or negligence, can they opt for cremation where the body is reduced to ashes within minutes?
Well, I mean, this is something of a very, very, very last resort. Otherwise, I know what happens in Europe and in the US and Australia, where there are these graves. Of course, the land that you buy for the grave is very expensive, and it's quite a lot of money, that like 10,000 plus US dollars, maybe even more, are spent. But in such cases, I do know that in many instances, if you feel like, I mean, sharing that the fact that you're not able in a position to spend this amount, then there are Islamic centers and there are mortuary services who take care of the expense, or you are just needed to spend partially. So I think that should be the first option, that you are able to, I mean, do it in the right and proper way. However, I do understand that's not possible all the time, and for the fact that it's a lot of money that a lot of people might not afford or cannot afford. For them, of course, it could be a last resort.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. And then related to that is, if a Muslim is living in these countries and they die with no family or community members around, and the local authorities decide to cremate the body, would that person be punished by God for not having made the arrangements for their burial during their lifetime?
Certainly not. That's not going to be in any way something that's going to be a source of penalizing that person, because remember, I mean, he was not responsible. All that he can do while he's living is that to leave enough money, that is, if he can afford, so that, as I said earlier on, that this is something that you can always write in your will. So that is all the more reason that you write down your will, in which you let other people know the form of burial, the sort of burial that you would like to prefer, and the amount of money that you have saved for this purpose. Of course, that's something that you can always point out. So nonetheless, the person is not going to be punished if the authorities decide to do something which is contrary to his own will.
If they have no will, what happens then?
Even then, I mean, in the first instance, I mean, people who are aware of the situation, the awareness should be created that they should write a will. But in the absence of any will, If something is done to the body of a deceased person by the authorities, then obviously the deceased person is not responsible for that.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next questioner asks, so qul, chelam, etc. are bid'at? Is that what you're trying to say? And if yes, and if we participate in these somehow, in these gatherings, is it sinful?
Well, I think I cannot say it's sinful. What we can do, because you see, one reason that we might need to participate is that the whole family is gathered at that instance, and we might not get to meet them if we don't attend that ceremony. So I think the one thing would be that you can be part of that ceremony without reading the Quran or without going through the rituals that are done on that day. You can just be there as a person who is moral support for the family, and as a person who is able to meet other people. So, I mean, that's something that you can always do.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Noshad Shafkat, you can go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. Thank you very much. Very enlightening lecture. Just a few words before I come to my actual question is that I was watching a religious scholar speak at a gathering, and the first question he asked was, which of you want to go to hell? And almost the entire hall raised their hands. And then he asked, which of you would like to die? Nobody, they were very reluctant to raise their hands. He said it is a sine qua non that before you go to heaven, you have to die. And another thing, sir, in your reminder of death, could we add that when we offer our prayers, always think that this is the last prayer that we are being given the
Yes,
opportunity of offering,
of course,
because
of course.
I have found this to be very, very touching and very effective in concentrating on the namaz itself.
Correct.
These were just comments, sir. The other thing was, the question basically was, in the post-prophetic era, you mean to say that even those who are guilty of serious crimes against
Right.
humanity, against
Yes.
religion, will they
Even
also
though,
be in the alam
yes,
barzakh without any punishment,
correct, correct.
or
That
will
is
they be
correct.
shown their
Because you see,
punishment?
for punishment in barzakh, you have to have this accountability finished in this world. Now that it might not necessarily be done for people who might be horrible criminals, so that is something that might not take place, because you see, for that you need the concept of itmamul hujja, which means that the truth must be communicated to you to such an extent that you are not in a position to deny it, and you still deny it. So that is something that must be done. So that is often done by messengers of God. There are other ways also in which this can be done. But if that has not been done, then that would mean that itmamul hujjah will then take place in the hereafter for that person, and then of course he will be rewarded or punished. So the principle on which this deduction is based is that itmamul hujjah, or the conclusive communication of the truth, for people for whom it takes place in this world, for them accountability in this world is going to happen, and that's going to continue in the territory or the area of barzakh. But for people for whom this doesn't happen, or conclusive communication of the truth does not happen, so for them it's just going to be a long sleep, uh, and that's all. So, and of course, this does not take anything away from the horrible punishment that such people will face in the hereafter. But remember, the Quran has promised them eternal hell.
Sir, I think while you were answering the question, the thought came to me that yes, it had to be that way because one country, one nation's terrorist is another nation's freedom fighter. So very
Right.
difficult
Correct.
to determine in these
It's
conditions.
absolutely, yes,
Thank
correct.
you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Akram Batisa, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you, sir, very much for your reminder for the death. I have a question that if one teaches his kids or grandkids Quran Pak, or take him for Umrah or Hajj, would he be rewarded for after when they read the Quran after his death?
Anything in which you initiate a good deed in your grandkids or your kids, and they practice that deed that you initiated in them after you pass away is going to be a source of reward.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Since we don't have any more raised hands, I'll ask my question. So you mentioned that having the cloth that you'll be buried in. I forgot the name of that cloth. Like people
Shroud.
have
It's
their
called a
Hajj towel.
shroud. Yeah.
Shroud. Okay. So having that around to constantly remind you of death is, a good thing. But if somebody already romanticizes death and they can't wait to like die, wouldn't that have like the opposite effect? Or is it
So,
wrong to romanticize that death, I suppose?
so I mean, when you say that you romanticize your death, so that's something of a thing in your mind, and you would like that death should come to you in a way that you are, I mean, you come before God in an honorable way. So that romanticism is something which is in your mind. So that piece of cloth is just going to, I mean, it's just going to remind you in a material form that this is the cloth in which you'll be covered before you're going to consign to the grave. So you see, this is like a material thing, and things which are tangible, things that you can see and touch and see, I mean, and look at, they always have a powerful impact.
Then related to that is if somebody is very prone to suicide and they opt, because in Islam we're not allowed to suicide, if they decide to go the route of like, hey, let me donate myself to science and like cryopreserve myself because
Right.
that way, I'm kind
Hmm.
of killing myself, would
Hmm.
that be allowed?
No, so you see, you can only donate yourself once you die. You can donate your body, your cadaver, once you die. I mean, you cannot donate
You
yourself.
Mm. Sorry, I was under the impression that you have to be alive before you go into cryopreservation. Like if you're donating yourself to one of those
No, no.
long.
That's if you're donating yourself. I mean, if you're being preserved before dying,
Yeah.
are you talking? I mean, that again is something in which you are actually gambling on your life. So you see, when you are preserving yourself, in fact, you are gambling on your life, which means that you might or you might not. I mean, in most cases, the chances that you're not going to be revived because there's no guarantee that the research is going to be successful on that particular disease. So I don't think this is in the right spirit, that when you try to preserve yourself now, because you see that the desire is to live more and more and to have an antidote for that terminal sickness. So I think in that case, the proper religious attitude would be to face the consequences in a brave way, because you see, all these things are coming up because of the fact that people want to, I mean, live longer. I mean, there's no harm, of course, in desiring to live longer, but to endanger your life, like jeopardize your life for that cause or that purpose, is I would not recommend that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sleep. Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Just the comment and question or topic that are we ready to die? One aspect or one perspective of seeing that is that when I particularly see my deeds and when I see what I'm supposed to do more, even thanking the Almighty about all His bounties to
Hmm.
me and everything, seems that I'm not ready at all to die.
Hmm.
But the second aspect or the second perspective is that the excitement of meeting my creator, like I'm excited to meet my mother
Hmm.
and to meet
Hmm.
someone
Hmm.
which is the center of everything, which loves me 70 times
Hmm.
more than my mother. It's
Hmm.
really overwhelming to see my Almighty.
Correct.
So
Hmm.
these are two perspectives of seeing this thing that we are ready to die on.
That's correct. I mean, you see, this is like a catch-22 situation. We don't want to die because we are not ready, in the sense that we would like to do some good deeds or make up for the lost deeds. So that's like the other side, the lopsided thing. The real thing is that whether we would like to die or whether we would not like to die, but still the fact is that we are going to die. So even if we don't want to die, we have to be prepared for death.
Okay, my second question to follow was the dua which I'm familiar is on entering the graveyard is probably Anta salafuna wa nahnu ba'dukum. Probably have the same meaning. Could you please repeat the dua a bit slowly what you said with the
So,
meaning?
so basically, it is Assalamu alaikum, ya ahlal kubur. Peace be to you, or dwellers of the graves. Inna insha'Allahu bikum lahiqun. Indeed, we are soon going to join you.
The last word is lahik, probably sir, like the
Yes,
lahika and Urdu
lahiqun.
prefix.
Right, right. The same word, which is called as lahiqun.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have a question in the chat that asks, what's the practice of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, regarding death?
Well, his practice is very evident from what happened when he was called to witness the death of his 4-year-old or infant son Ibrahim. So someone told him that your son is about to die, or maybe he's passed away. Please come over. So when he came over, either he was taking his last breaths or he was just passed away, and he spoke those sublime sentences which reflect what we all should do when we see someone die around us. And he said that al ainu tadma, which means that my eyes, they are flooded with tears. Wal qalbu tahzan, and my heart is extremely sorrowful. Walakin arzi birazillah, but I am happy with the will of God. I'm satisfied with the will of God. So my eyes are flooded with tears, my heart is in anguish, but I am satisfied at the will of God. I think this is what we should always keep in mind when we look at the death of a dear departed. And as far as our own death is concerned, the Prophet would often say that he would keep on reminding himself of death. And that reminder is something, the biggest reminder, of course, is that we have the elements of nature reminding us every day. When we sleep at night, it's like a small death. And the next day when we wake up, it's like getting up once again. So when we sleep, we don't have any idea of what's going on. And when we get up after a deep sleep, we say that, well, we just slept a couple of maybe minutes ago, whereas we might have slept for 8 hours. So this rehearsal of day and night, or sleeping at night and then getting up in the morning, the Quran, in fact, presents this as an evidence of life after death.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salman Aziz. Please go ahead.
So incidentally, I was just coming from the graveyard, offering Fatiha, the grave of my father. So seeing different graves, I had a couple of questions or thoughts in my mind that we see that sometimes people do reserve some courtyards in the graveyard for themselves, their families. So is it okay? And what about making the raised graves? Because if the Abrahamic religions have the same roots, so I think in Christianity or Judaism, probably there's no concept of raised graves. Only they have some markers probably for the graves. So what is the correct thing of doing that? And just supplement to that, if we do not raise the graves or do not have some boundary of the actual place where the dead body was buried, so how can we know that what is the place of the head or the foot, so to avoid walk on the grave, please?
So, I mean, having a mark as a grave, whether it's a vertical mark, whether it's a longish mark like mostly Muslims do, that's absolutely fine. And cementing the grave is not a problem. You see, in the times of the Prophet, the thing that he actually warned his ummah was that there are instances that might happen in which if you bury someone, especially if someone who is a saintly person, someone who's very pious, and then someone starts coming to that grave and then starts worshiping that grave and prostrating that grave. So his objective was that because polytheism reigned supreme in his time, and he wanted to just uproot all signs of polytheism. And because in those days graves were raised high in order to be worshipped, so he said that we should not do that. So it's basically a precautionary measure. And this should still be maybe held in practice, especially for people who are who are very pious and about whom there might be this fear that, well, once you create a mausoleum or a place, that people might come and start doing all sorts of things. And we know that has happened. For example, the Sufi saints in our Indo-Pak subcontinent, if you go to their mausoleums, you'll see what's going on. People are literally prostrating to that grave. So this was the reason that the Prophet said that we should not cement the grave. So it was meant particularly for these people. As far as people like us are concerned, who are ordinary individuals about whom we don't find any reason that they're going to be people who just come and prostrate. There's no reason for them not to raise their grave or have them cemented. That's absolutely a choice that we have. And I think I forgot your first question.
So that was that people get some area reserved for themselves, their
Yes.
families in the
So
graveyard.
if you see, if they buy that area, we cannot object, because now they are buying that area and reserving it for themselves. And if there is some other there are other way in which they reserve their grave, maybe by, I don't know how, this could be like asking the caretaker there that this place should be reserved for them and no one else should be buried here. I mean, nothing illegal should be done in this situation. That's what I'm saying. Otherwise, if you reserve your grave or your place in a legal way, in a way that's acceptable, I mean, there's no problem in that.
So generally, the influence is used, and what I've seen, and
So that's what I'm saying.
supplementary. So,
Yes, anything which is unbecoming, anything which is not according to the law, not according to the norms, should not be indulged in.
so what should be the height of the grave? So we should leave to our own good
Oh, yes,
judgment.
absolutely. It's your own choice. And let me tell you, in many graveyards, there are standards that have been fixed. They tell you that, well, this is how the grave would be made. But in those cases where there's no such standard, it's entirely up to you. And people mostly copy the tombstones and the graves that they find nearby. So, and there's no such restriction. I mean, you can raise it high, you can, reasonably high, of course.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Hadith Qureshi, please go ahead.
Sir, what about the grave of Prophet, peace be upon him? What people do visit there with
Hmm.
high religious fervor, and they also
Right.
tend to say prayers and do some things that seem objectionable. Could you please guide what are the things that one can do
So I
while
think that
visiting the tomb?
had the Prophet been alive, he would not have condoned this practice. But nonetheless, it has some. I mean, it is a historical event that has happened. It was something that was finalized. So, given the fact that the Saudi authorities today and in the past, they have been very, very, very strict that any such prostration would not be allowed. I mean, I think that is how it happens. But so you can still not stop people from, I mean, what they do at times, they just, they just rub their foreheads on that grill that they can see, or and they just express their emotions. So yes, this is something that at times becomes a little bit, it crosses the limits. But all that we can do now is to educate people that and remind ourselves that graves, of course, they are just reminders for our own death, and they must not be used to venerate the person who is being consigned to the grave. They should not venerate, and we should not prostrate on that grave, not think that the person who is lying in that grave has some power over God or is able to intercede for them on the day of judgment in a illegitimate way. So that education, coupled with the fact that Saudi authorities, they are pretty strict. They don't allow any such prostration, except where people are able to get away with it in by not coming in the notice. That might be an exception. Otherwise, to my knowledge, I've been there. I've seen that. I think that there is a lot of restriction that does not allow this to happen.
So when you were there, I'm just curious, you're just trying to get some guidance as to what is it that I should do, or what is the purpose of me visiting the
I
grave.
mean, the purpose should be just to go there and offer your regards to the Prophet and recite the durood. Durood is like a prayer for the Prophet. That's all. It is like our expression of love and asking for God's blessings. Remember, the durood that we do is like the dua for the Prophet. It says, Allahumma barik kama barakta ala Ibrahim. So these are all prayers that we offer for the Prophet. That is all that we should do.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. If we have about 4 minutes more remaining. So if somebody has any last minute questions, now's the time to raise your hand and ask. Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
So could you please guide, are there any rules of shifting the dead body in case of any problem? For example, some area of a graveyard where the grave is, it becomes flood prone or things like that. So if you want to shift the dead body and bury somewhere else, it's okay.
It's fine. I mean, people have done this. It has happened so on numerous occasions. You just take out the dead body. Of course, you show proper respect to it. There are no, I mean, you don't need to be guided because people, they know in their own innate guidance that you just need to exhume the body, just take it out, and just shift it in a very respectful way to another destination.
Another question is, sir, that there is a trend that at times that if nobody visits a grave and the grave is not cemented, the caretaker at times just wipes it out and make it level and makes place for other graves. So is there any limit? I don't doubt that it's in the religion or in the fiqh that what should be the limit of keeping a grave?
There is no such limit to keep the grave intact. I mean, normally 3 generations or at maximum 4 generations, because you see, the people who visit the grave are the ones who are up to the grandchildren or maybe the great grandchildren. And then the great great grandchildren, or maybe later ones, they don't even know because they might not be living there. Or they could be even a law that can be passed in which a country administration can say that we'll just keep the grave for 100 years or for 60 years or for 3 generations. Because you see, ultimately, I mean, you have to give way. You just cannot have infinite amount of ground available for graveyards.
Regarding sir, the darood and salam, the using the word salam with darood is okay because salam is generally for the people who are living, probably.
No,
So
we can
it's
even
okay to
say, I
use the
mean,
word.
oh yes, when we say Assalamu alaikum ya ahlal kubur, that is what we say to people who are dead. So we are wishing peace to them. So that, of course, is not that they are hearing that salam or that peace. It's that our expression of solidarity and concern and sincerity for the person who's in the grave. So it's not meant for them to hear it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. There is another question in the chat that asks, can there be multi-story graveyards?
Well, I guess we need to see that. I mean, I don't see why we cannot have them. If there is some space restriction or issue, we can have a space and then another grave. I mean, the architect or the person who's going to construct them, of course, it's up to him. But otherwise, anything which is acceptable in the sense that people can come and pay their respects, and not in any way not able to, I mean, infringe on other people's graves so that other people are also able to come. I don't see that this could be any problem.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another very enlightening session and the new series, Special Topic Saturdays. Inshallah, we'll see you all tomorrow in another session of Textual Study of the Qur'an. Thank you all for coming through, and thank you, Dr. Saleem, for this wonderful new series. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.